In this video, we'll be discussing about user-defined functions in Python. So this will be the second part of chapter 7. Now, user-defined functions are written by the programmer itself to perform a specific task that he has to do inside the program. So there are two types of functions defined in Python. Okay, so the first type is user-defined function, which we will be studying in this video, and in the subsequent videos we will be seeing standard library functions which is defined along with the Python interpreter itself. Now, what do you mean by user-defined functions? Okay, so here you can see the word user. So who is the user? That is us. Okay, so as a programmer, if you are writing functions into your program for solving your problems, then those functions are called as user-defined functions. Okay, so here you can see these are functions written by the programmer itself to solve a particular task inside the program. Okay, and Python says there is no limit on how many such functions you can write inside a program. So you can have any number of functions written into your program. Now, what is the syntax for function creation? You have to use the keyword def. Def actually stands for define. Okay, so you have to write def. After def, you have to write the name of the function. So what name you can give here, it's up to you. You can decide on any name. Mostly we will give the name of the function which reflects the job of the function. Okay, so whatever is the work that you are assigning to the function, you will give the name accordingly so that when you read the name, you can understand this will be the activity of this function. Now, the rule for creating a valid function name is same as the rule for creating a valid identifier. We have studied that in the previous classes, right? Now, you remember that it cannot start with a number. Then only special character that can be used inside the name is an underscore. Then keywords cannot be used. So all those rules apply to the name that you select for the function. Now, after you have written the name of the function, you can write a list of parameters. Now, parameters are the values which are accepted by the function, and then function will work on these values to produce the output. Now, inside the function, you can see it is indented. So the entire part which is indented inside the def keyword is taken as the body of the function. Now, you can have many statements inside the function. One of those statement can be a return. So you can see return is a keyword. Now, after return, you can write a value or a set of value. So what is the purpose of this return statement is that once the function finishes its job, the return value will return the result that the function has found out to the main program which has called this function. So right now I can understand I have taught you many new terms inside Python. So things will be a little confusing to you at this point of time. But when we move to examples, all these things will be very clear to you. So now let us go forward. Now this will be our first example program which works with a function. Okay, so this is a small program which reads two numbers and then it will find the sum of that two numbers and it will print it. That's it. Now I have one more comment here. This program is not passing any arguments and it doesn't have a return value. So if you check in this function, you will not see any parameters inside the function and there is no return statement. But we have more example coming by where we have many arguments and return value. So let me explain to you how this works. So here you can see def add. So this is the name of the function. So this entire part which is indented inside the function definition is actually the body of the function. Okay, so now you can see there is only one line outside the function which is add with open and close parentheses. Now this is your function call. All right, or you can say this is the only main program that you have. So now let me explain to you how it works. So the first statement to execute will be this line. So here you will call the function add. Now the interpreter will check the entire code to find out where the function add is defined. Now it will find out here. I can see the definition of add. So now from this add, the control will jump to here. Now the function will start to perform. It will go and execute the first line. The first line takes a number as input and that will be loaded into variable A. So if I enter 10, then 10 will be stored into A. After that it will ask for the second number. If I enter 20, 20 will be loaded into variable B. After that, inside function, I will add A and B. So now the variable C has value 30. And after that, inside the function itself, I will print sum of 10 and 20 is 30. So after this print statement, the function is finished. Now the control will come back to where you have called it. Okay, and now here you can see there is nothing more to do here. So now the program terminates. So now let us run this program. So now our program is ready. I will just execute it. Now it is asking for the first number. I will enter number 10. I'll press enter. Now it is asking for the second number. I will enter 20. Now it will print the result saying that sum of 10 and 20 is 30. So now here you should understand we are not doing any job in our main function. We are just calling the function called add. The entire job of collecting the input for A and B, adding them and storing the result to C, and printing the final result onto the screen is done by our function, right? So that is why we didn't had any parameter value getting passed, or we don't need any return statement inside the function definition. All right. So next we will see an example where we will have parameters and return value. Then you will understand what is the purpose of that. So now let us continue. So now here you can see in the next program, we are doing the same operation here. We are just adding two numbers. You can see we are finding the sum of two numbers, but now we are using arguments and we are using return value. Now you can see this is the function definition called add, and there are only two statements inside this function definition. Right, so inside the body of function we have only two lines, and we can also see that this add function is expecting two values in n1 and n2 to be sent when you call the function. Right, and collecting the input and printing the result, all this job is now done by your main program unit, okay, outside the function. So now you see your interpreter will start from here. So this is the first line that will be executed. Now I have to enter the value, so I will enter 10. So 10 will be stored into A. Now it will ask for the second number. I will enter 20. Now 20 will be stored into B. Now you see this is the line where you call the function called add. But now when you're calling add, you are sending two values along with it. So that's the difference. So now when you call function add with these two values A and B, the value of A will be transferred to n1 and value of B will be transferred to n2. So now you should know the value of n1 will be 10 and value of n2 will be 20. So now I will add n1 and n2, that is 10 and 20, and the result 30 will be stored in n3. Alright, now you see I am not printing the result inside function add. So I am using the return statement to give the value of n3 back to the caller. Okay, so now I will use the keyword return with the value that I have to return. So you see n3 is currently having value 30. So value 30 is returned to the function call. So you can see this is where the function call is. So this return statement will push the control back to here. Right, so this entire part add AB now evaluates to 30 because that is the value returned from this function. So 30 will be stored into variable C. So now I will print sum of 10 and 20 is 30. So you will see the same result, but here the functionality is completely different from the previous program. We have used the concept of parameters. We also use the concept of a return statement. So now let us run this program. So now our program is ready. I'll execute it. So now you see this first print statement is getting executed inside my main program, okay, not from the function. Okay, so now I will enter 10, I'll press enter. Now the second line is also getting executed from the main program. It is asking for the second input 20. So now when I press enter, the value of A and B will be sent by this function call to function definition. Now value of A will be sent to N1 and value of B will be sent to N2. Then it will add N1 and N2, and once the result is ready, the return statement will send the value of N3 back to the function call. Right? So this entire part, this add A and B, will result in 30. So now 30 will be stored into C, and now the last print statement will print the result as sum of 10 and 20 is 30. Okay, so now let us continue. Now, as shown in the previous program, whenever you have to send value from a function, you have to understand the concept of arguments and parameters. Now, arguments are the value passed to the function during the function call. Parameters are the value that is defined in the function header, which receives the corresponding argument value from the function call. Now you should understand the argument and the parameter refer to the same data object inside the memory, and so they will share the same ID value. We will understand this with an example. Now a function may or may not have parameters. We have already seen all of this in the previous examples. Let us just go to the previous programs to make things clear. So this function add is an example which doesn't have any parameters inside it, right? And if you come to the next program, which we have already executed, now here you can understand the concept of arguments and parameters. You see, this statement is the function call. This statement is your function definition. Okay, so please understand that very clearly. The variables that you use inside the function call, that is A and B, these are called arguments. Right? And the variables that you use inside function definition to collect the values that is given to it by the arguments is called as parameters. So now it will be clear to you what is argument, what is parameter, and a function may or may not have parameters. Now the argument and parameters refer to the same object with same ID. We will see that with another example. Now let us discuss a little bit about returning value from a function. If you want to send the result of the function's work back to the calling function, you have to use the keyword return. Okay. Now function may or may not have return value. So it is not mandatory that every function should have a return value. If it doesn't have a return value, when the function is finished, automatically the control will go back to the main program. Now the return statement is used to return value or values. You can use the return to send one data item back to the calling function, or you can use return statement to return a set of values to the calling function. Now it returns the control to the calling function. So these are the two jobs of return, right? First thing, it will return a set of values or a single value to the main program. It will also take the control out of the function and give it to the calling function. Now there is something called as a void function. Now that's a function that does not return any value. So when you write a function, it's up to you whether your function has to return a value or it doesn't have to return a value, whether it requires some parameters to work or whether it doesn't require any parameter to work. It's up to you. So based on the problem that you're trying to solve, your requirement will be different. Now based on that, you have to design your function. Now I have already discussed with you that whether the arguments and parameters have the same ID. We will discuss this with an example, right? So this program will actually make it clear to you how the parameter and the argument work together. So here you can see this is the function call and this is the function definition for the function called add. So we have two arguments here, right? We have argument A and argument B. Now the value of argument A is supposed to be used by parameter n1, and value of b is supposed to be used by parameter n2. Now we have discussed how an object is maintained in memory and how the variables are referring to it when we study the previous chapter. Anyway, we will discuss it here once again so that you understand it better. So this is my memory unit. So here, let's say we are starting the program. So this is the first statement that will get executed. So it is asking for the first number. I'll give input as 10. So when I give the input as 10 in memory, I'll create the value 10 and variable a will be referring to it. Now in the next statement, I will give another value 20. So anywhere in memory, another piece will be taken, 20 will be written to it, and variable b will be referring to it. And after that, I am printing the ID of a and ID of b. Okay, before I'm calling the function. So assume that the ID of a is 167.1761.314. Okay, just assume a number. And ID of b is 8163.167, something like that. Okay, so this is the ID of b and this is the ID of a. So those numbers will be printed out. Okay, when we run the program, the ID is going to be different. This is just an example. And now I'm going to call the function. So from here, the control will go to the function definition. I have to receive the value of a in n1 and b in n2. So what happens here is that I'll create a new variable n1 and n1 will be referring to the same location. So the same ID will be used by n1 and n2 will be created that will be referring to the same memory location and the same ID of b will be shared by n2. So now when the function starts, the value of a will be available inside n1, the value of b will be available inside n2, because you can see they are referring to the same memory location, right? So I will add 10 and 20, so n3 will have value 30. So now I am printing the ID of n1 and ID of n2. So the same value 1761314 and 8163.167 will be printed out. Now to show you that ID value can change, I am just trying to change the value of n1. So here you can see now the value of n1 is 10. So in this statement, I am increasing the value of n1 by 1. So now the value of n1 is 11. So what happens in the memory? I will write 11 to memory. The old n1 is destroyed. I'll create another n1 and this n1 will be pointing to the new value, and of course this n1 is going to have another ID, something different. So to make it clear to you, in the next statement I am printing the ID of n1. So here you can see the ID of n1 will change. It will be different from a, because now a points to 10 and n1 points to another object which has value 11. So now let us run this program. Alright, our program is ready. So now I will just run it. Now it is asking for the first number. I will enter 10. It will ask for the second number. I will enter 20. Now the first print statement I am printing inside the main function itself. Now there you can see it is printing the ID of a and ID of b. After that I am calling the function add with arguments a and b. So now n1 will point to the same location as a and n2 will point to the same location as b. Now inside the function I will add two values and I will get the result 13 and 3, and after that I am printing the ID of n1 and ID of n2. Now here you can see the ID of a and ID of n1 is same, and ID of b and ID of n2 is also the same. Why? Because a and n1 is referring to value 10, b and n2 is referring to value 20. So now after that I am going to change the value of n1 to 11 and then I am going to print the ID of n1. So now you can see the ID of n1 is different from a, because now a is referring to object 10 and n1 is referring to another object with value 11. And after that, return n3 will send the value back to this function. So now this function evaluates to 30. That value will be stored into C, and then I will print the last result. Okay, so let us continue now. Now in this program, we will be combining the first and last name, and it will just print your full name. Okay, so you just have to give two words as the input. The first word will be your first name and the second word will be your last name. Your program will just combine it and return or print your full name as a result. Now in this program, we will study how to pass a string as a parameter, because all the previous programs we were passing numbers. So here you can see the function definition starts with the keyword def. After that, I have the name of the function. So I have selected the name of the function as full name itself. After that, I have two parameters, fname and lname, separated by a comma. And as always, the function definition should end with a colon. Now, inside the function, I will just create a new variable full, which takes the value of combining. So you can see this plus works as concatenate operation when it works with strings, right? So it will take the value of fname, it will add a space to that, and then it will add the value of lname. So you will get the full name, and that will be stored into variable full, and your function will return that value to the main function, so where you can print the result. Now the program execution always starts with the main function. So it will ask for the first word to be entered. So I will enter len set, okay, and then it will ask for the second word. So I will enter learn. We will give the name of our channel itself, and then here I am calling the function. Okay, so this is a function call with two arguments, first and last. Okay, so the value of first will be sent to fname and value of last will be sent to lname, right? And inside the function, we will combine lens space learn, and that will be stored into variable full. So now the value of full will be returned to the function call. Right, so this entire function call will now evaluate to lens space learn, and that will be copied into variable f, and in the last statement I will print the full name is the value of f. Right, so now let us run the program. Now our program is ready, so let me execute it. So now it is asking for the first name. I will enter len set, and the second name learn. Okay, so now I'll press enter. Now you can see the result is coming as the full name is lens. Then in between them, we have added a space, and after that, the second word, right? So we have just printed out the full name for a particular person. Okay, so now let us continue. Now in the next program, we will be demonstrating the purpose of a default parameter. So in this program, we will be trying to find the product of two numbers, right? So we are just going to receive two numbers from the keyboard. We will multiply and give the result. Now we will see what is default parameter with this example. Now we see in this function definition, the name of the function is mul. There are two parameters, n1 and n2. Now you can see there is some difference in n2. So here you can see n2 is having a default value of 1. So when you give default value for parameters, there is one condition that you have to be very careful about. All default parameters inside the function definition should be listed to the end. If I have 4 parameters like a, b, c, d inside a function called sample, and assume that the parameter b and parameter c has default value 10 and 5. So in this case, if you create the function definition of sample like this, a, comma, b equal to 10, comma, c equal to 5, comma, d, this will give error, right? Why? Because all default parameters should be listed to the last, which means b and c should come after d, right? So the right way of defining this will be def sample. First you finish writing all the regular parameters which doesn't have default values. So I have a and d, and followed by that you can have all the parameters which has default values. Okay, so I can write here c equal to 5, and after that b is equal to 10. Okay, there is no problem. So this will work correctly, but this definition will give you an error. Now let us see how this program runs, then you will understand what is the purpose of a default parameter. Now the execution starts from the first statement inside your main function. Now it is asking for an input value for a. So assume that I enter 10. So now the value of a is 10, right? So here you can see I'm calling the function mul, which is defined over here, with a single value a. So the value of a will be copied to the first parameter available inside function definition. N1 receives value 10. But what about N2? You can see here there is no second argument which is passed so that N2 can receive a value. In that case, N2 will work with the default value. So now I will multiply 10 into the value of N2 will be taken as the default value 1. So 10 into 1. So 10 will be stored into N3. Now the return will send the value of N3 back, and that value will be copied to C. So now C has value 10, and I will print first product is C. So value 10 will be printed in the output. Now we should understand we have made use of the default value. So now let us continue. I have to enter the second value. So if I enter 3, okay, so the value 3 will be copied to variable b, and now I am calling the same function, but this time I have 2 arguments. So now the first argument's value will be sent to N1, and the second argument value will be sent to N2, and now N2 will not consider the default value. N2 will take the value which it has obtained from the function call. So now when this statement executes, you are multiplying 10 into 3, because now N2 has value 3. Okay, so now the value of N3 will be 30. Now it will be returning value 30 to the calling function, and now value 30 will be stored into C, and now you will see the result 30 will come as the answer. So now let us run this program. So our program is ready, so let us run it. So now it is asking for the first number. I will enter 10 and I will press enter. Now you see I got the result from the function. Okay, so I have called the function with just one value. So this value of a is copied to N1, and N2 assumes the default value 1, and then the function proceeds. I get the result. Now I'll enter the second value 20 to b, right? Now here you can see again the function mul is called, but this time with 2 values. The first value with 10 and the second value b with 20. So now the value of 10 will be copied to N1 and value 20 will be copied to N2, right? So now the multiplication happens between 10 and 20, and the result 200 is stored into N3, and now it is returned. So now this multiplication function will evaluate to 200, and that 200 is copied to variable C, and now you will print variable C, and you can see that is the last statement in the output. Okay, so now let us continue. Now in this program we will demonstrate the function of returning multiple values using tuple. We have studied tuple in previous chapter, right? So using tuple you can return many values together from the function to the main function where the function is called. So here we have a function definition. The name of the function is a rectangle, and it has 2 parameters, L and B, right? L is supposed to get value of length and B is supposed to get the value of breadth, and inside the function I'll be calculating the area and perimeter with respective formula. And with return statement, now you see I am trying to return 2 values, right? And you remember tuple is represented by a parenthesis. Now inside that you can have any number of values, right? So this is the example for tuple. So here you can see we are following the same construct of a tuple with 2 values inside it. Of course, you can have n number of values. If you want to return 5 or 10 values, you can do that. So this function rectangle is trying to send the area and perimeter value back to the caller. So let us see how it works. So the first statement that is executed in this program is the first statement inside the main function. So there I will enter the value for length, for example as 10 centimeter, and the second statement I have to enter the value for breadth. I will enter it as 20, and after that I am calling the function rectangle with 2 arguments. The value of length is going to be 10 and value of breadth is going to be 20. Now the value of length will be sent to parameter L and the value of breadth will be sent to parameter B. Okay, so now inside the function I will multiply 10 and 20, so area will have value 200, and in here I will have 30 into 2, so L plus B, that is 30 into 2, so perimeter will be 60, and now I am returning value 200 comma 60. Right, so I'm returning 2 values together using my return keyword. Now this value will come to the function call. Now to accept these values back to the main function, I require equal number of parameters to the left side. So the first value of area will be copied into variable A, and the second value perimeter will be copied into B. And after that I will print the value of A as area and I will print the value of B as perimeter. So now let us run this program. So first I have to enter the length. I will enter 10. I'll press enter. Next it is asking for the breadth. I will enter 20. I will press enter. So now after I enter length and breadth, I will call the function rectangle with those values. Alright, so the value will be passed to L and B, and inside the function I will calculate area and perimeter, and using return I will be sending the value of area and perimeter, that is 2 values I will be sending back to my function call. Alright, so in here it will be evaluated as 200 comma 60. So once the return happens, this is how the program will be. So now 200 will be copied to A and 60 will be copied to B. Right, and after that I am just printing the value of A and B as area and perimeter, and my program terminates. Now let us go to the last slide of this video. Now next we are going to study about flow of execution inside a Python program when we have functions. Now the order in which the statements are executed in a program is called as a flow of execution. Now Python by default follows a top-down approach, which means that if we have the Python file, always the execution will start at the top, right? Then it goes down each line by line until your program finishes. But if you have a function inside your program, then the flow of execution is going to be different. So that is what we are going to see now. So when the Python interpreter encounters a function header or a function definition, what happens is that first, the body of the function will be executed only at the function call. Now second, at function call, the control will jump to the function definition. Now we already see many examples for this. And the third point, after executing the function body, the control returns to the function call itself. And the last point is that a function should be defined before it is called in Python, otherwise you will have an error. Now let us take an example program which we have already discussed, just to explain the concepts that we have studied here. So now let's see how the flow of control happens in this program. As I always told you, Python will always start at the first line. So when it sees the first line, it starts with a hash. So it just skips because it's a comment. It goes to the next line. It sees a hash. So that's also a comment. It comes to the third line. Now in the third line, when Python sees this def add, Python understands this is a function definition, right? So Python takes a note of it that we have a function defined with name add, okay? And after that, it will just skip the entire function and it will come to the next line, okay? And here, the execution starts. That is why I always told you this is the first statement that will be executed, right? So here the program execution starts. You can input number 10, and after that control will go to the next line. There you can input 20, and after that the control will go to the third line, and in here your function is called. But now Python already knows that there is a function defined with name add because it has seen the definition. So now Python will move the control from here to here, back. Now it will accept the value inside N1 and N2 from A and B. The control will go into the function. It will execute this statement. It will execute this statement. Now when it sees the return, the control will come back to the same line where it has gone up. It is not going to the next line. So please understand that. When you see return, it will come back to the function call, right? And value of N3 will be loaded to C. After that only the control will go to the next line. So this is how a flow of control happens when your program has a function. To understand this better, I will just run this program again, but this time I will debug it so that the execution goes line by line, right? So you can understand the execution will start from here, and once the function call happens, the execution is jumping to the function definition, so things will be clear to you. So now let us run this program once again. Alright, now to see how the flow control happens with this program which is having a function inside it, I'll be clicking on the next button which says debug current script. Okay, so I'll click it. So now you see Python interpreter just skipped the to comment statement, and now it sees the definition of the function. So I'll press F6 so that the next statement is executed, right? So now you see the control came out of the function add. So now you should understand Python has taken a note of it, that there is a function defined with name add. It didn't went into the individual statements inside the function, right? It just jumped out to the first statement inside my main program. So now when I press F6, you can see this line is executed. I can see the result on my terminal. I will input 10. I will press enter. So now you can see the control comes to the next line. I'll press F6, so that line is also executed. I will enter 20. Now I can press enter. So now you can see here we are in line number 10, right, where we have the function call to function add. So now you have to press F7 to go into this function, right? So we can clearly understand how it works. So I'll press F7. So here you can see now I have to call function add AB. Now you press F7 again. So now it will resolve the value of A and B to 10 and 20. And now it will call the function, right? So here you can see now the control goes to the function. Now N1 has value 10, N2 has value 20. Now it is calculating the value of N1 and N2 is replaced. Now it will add, and now 30 will be stored into the variable N3. So here you can see variable N3 is created with value 30. Now it has to return the value, right? So the control will come back to the main function. I'll press F7 again. N3 will be evaluated to 30. So now I will come back to my function call, and now you see this entire function is evaluated to 30. So now 30 will be copied to C. Okay, so this is how the flow of control happens when you have a function inside your Python program. So I'll press F6. So now we can see sum of 10 and 20 is 30. So the last thing I want you to understand is that if I just cut this function definition and put it after the main program, now what will happen? Okay, so now I will save it. I will just clear the screen. So now I will debug it. So now you see the execution started with the first line. I will press F6. It is asking for the first number. I will enter 10, enter. Now the control goes to the next line. I will press F6. I will enter 20. I'll press enter. Now we have a problem. Now if I press F6, it will give error. Why? Now I am asking the interpreter to go to the function definition of add. But you see, interpreter didn't see any function definition add up till now, because actually the definition is coming only at line number 10. But now we have reached only line number 7. So now interpreter will give an error saying that I don't know where function add is, right? So I'll press F6. Now you can see we got the error. Name error, name add is not defined. Even though you define the function add after the function call in the program, it will give error. So this is the last point that we have studied. Always the function definition should be above the function call. Or line number 9, I am having the function call. So the function definition should happen before line number 9. Okay. So now you can run the program. Now you can see it will work perfectly. In the next video, we will be studying about the scope of a variable inside a function. All right. Thank you.